Hey, what is up guys, Murgaman4 here, and it's now been about 2 or so months since Series 11 came to a close, and with that I'd like to give some of my afterthoughts on the series. Before the series began I did some pre-thoughts going into the series, and now that that finished a couple months ago I've had some time to let that sit and me, I guess, figure out my overall feelings of all these changes. Because, of course, Series 11 marked a massive change for the show, easily the biggest since it came back, and outside of the 2005 revival, probably the biggest in the show's history. So, yeah, a lot of stuff going on there, a lot of new things to get used to, and so I thought it would be interesting to talk about that and explore, the things that I like about this new era and the things that I'm not a huge fan of, and yeah, so this is probably going to be split into 2 parts, just like my pre-thoughts, but without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about Series 11. So, first off, I'm not really going to be discussing specific episodes too much in this. This isn't about like the quality of the individual episodes, just about the direction of the show and the people like making the show and just the overall feel of it, as opposed to individual episodes and which ones I like the most and which ones I like the least. That's going to be a separate video. I'm probably going to make that in another couple of months, about 6 months or so after Series 11 had begun. So I think that's going to land at around April sometime. But I did the same thing with Series 10. I waited about 6 months after the series began, and then I rewatched the series in a few days, and then gave my thoughts on all the episodes and as this overall story as a whole, how it played out as a series. And I'm going to be doing that same thing with Series 11. So probably sometime in April I'll rewatch all the episodes again, and then I'll go into more depth in specific episodes and the series story as a whole. But for now I'm just going to be focusing on basically the changes, all the vast amount of changes that have gone on and what I think of them. So this is going to focus more on like the behind the scenes stuff, not plot related or not like within the universe of the show. This is the process of making the show, so the writers, the actors, the new composer, things like that. And of course, probably one of the biggest ones is our new showrunner, Chris Chibnall. So he is the 3rd showrunner of the revived era after Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat, and like Moffat before him, he did write in the previous eras of the show, so he's got experience writing Doctor Who. However, the key difference with Chibnall is that his episodes have not been the most well received in the past, and I know I personally haven't been a huge fan of his episodes, and even including Series 11, none of the Series 11 episodes are my favorite Chibnall episode. Likewise, none of the Series 11 episodes are equal to my least favorite Chibnall episode, so basically all of Chibnall's Series 11 work has gone in between what's come before. Which is somewhat disappointing because I know before the series began, I was hoping that perhaps he would improve as a writer, but I don't really think he's improved at all. Especially one of the things I was thinking is, well, it's been 6 years since his last episode for the show, but no, he's about the same. And where that's at for me is fine, but nothing exceptional. It's entirely possible, now that this series is finished airing, that he's definitely going to be taking into account the general reception of Series 11, and hopefully he'll be implementing a lot of that to improve his writing next season. The other factor, too, of course, is that Chibnall actually wrote more than half the episodes of the season. He wrote 6 of the... well, he wrote 5 and then co-wrote 1 of the 10 episodes of the season, which is about a similar percentage as to what RTD wrote for Series 1. So hopefully he's going to be writing less. I don't say that because I really didn't like his writing. I know a lot of people, that's their reason for saying that. For me, it's just because I want to be able to experience more writers' ideas and thoughts. and see what more different, like more variety of writers can do. But like I said, I was hoping he had improved, so I was pretty optimistic, and I didn't really think that his past work should hold a bearing on my opinion on him going in. Well, I mean, I guess a little bit of a bearing, but not as much of a bearing, because the other thing too is showrunning is a very different job to just being a guest writer. And of course, being a guest writer, you have no idea how much of his scripts were actually written by the then showrunner at the time. But yeah, like I said, I've never been a huge lover of Chibnall, and this series has not done anything to change my opinion on him as a writer, which is rather unfortunate, but at the very least, I don't think he ever came off worse as I, had thought of him before. So it sucks that I don't think better of him, but at least I don't think worse of him. And what do I think of him as a showrunner? I actually like him quite a bit as a showrunner and the direction that he's taking the show. I'll be talking about that in a bit more detail later in the video in the more specific stuff. But yeah, I like him as the showrunner. I'm not the biggest fan of him as a writer. I still think he's a good writer. I just don't think he's any better than good. Yeah, but I really like him as a showrunner. I don't think he should write as much in his upcoming seasons, but I think he's doing a good job as showrunner and giving it a new direction for the show and trying new things and trying to make his era stand out. I think he's doing a great job of that, and I personally would like to see him continue as showrunner for at least another few seasons. Obviously, we know he's already doing Series 12 as well, but I'd like to see him stick around for maybe around the same length as RTD did. I think that sounds about good for me. But also related to writing, we have 5 new writers this season. And unlike any other season of the show, except for, of course, Series 1, this is the only season where none of the guest writers are returning from a previous season. Which is, on the one hand, and this is how I felt going into it, and I still kind of feel the same way. On the one hand, it's disappointing, because obviously there are plenty of guest writers who are excellent and would be great to return. But it's also a pretty exciting thing, because it's great to have some new, some fresh blood and fresh ideas. And I do think I can definitely confirm that I am okay with this decision. I think that was a fine decision. I do know that Chibnall didn't do this intentionally. He specifically asked Mark Gatiss to write for this season, and Gatiss declined, saying he wanted a break. And he also asked Sarah Dollard to write for this season, but she couldn't because she was too busy. And he was in talks with Jamie Matheson to write for this season, but plans fell through. So we know that for sure that Chibnall hasn't just been no returning writers at all. He's been in contact with them and tried to get them to write. It's just it hasn't worked out, and honestly, I don't mind that much. Now, there are certainly certain writers like Jamie Matheson who I think would do an incredible job. I've loved Matheson's episodes in the past. The only one of his that I didn't care for that much was one he co-wrote with Moffat. So I think it would be great if writers like Jamie Matheson could come back for Series 12, but I think for Series 11, with its kind of fresh feeling, I think it worked to have all new writers, honestly. I think it worked really well, and I think I do have to agree with the majority online who seems to think that pretty much all the guest writers are better writers than Chibnall. I can't really argue against that too much. Of course, all of them only wrote one episode, whereas Chibnall's written numerous episodes, obviously. So maybe, once they write some more episodes, if they write some more episodes. I think Ed Heim, who wrote It Takes You Away, I'm pretty sure he's writing an episode for Series 12. Then we can, get a more accurate perception on how good of a writer they truly are, whether it was just a one-off or if they are consistently good. But yeah, I think I agree with pretty much everyone else that the guest writers this season were better writers than Chibnall, which is a shame. But again, also a reason why it would be nice to have some more guest writers. But yeah, I think it was really good to have, a lot of fresh blood this season. But now I'd like some more returning writers for Series 12. I think that would be good. It was a nice break, but it's not something that I'd like to be permanent. Somewhat connected to that is up until Resolution, all of the directors this season were brand new, and I think they all did a really good job. Actually, connected to that, the visual style this season is fantastic. Going into it, the trailers looked really good, and the show had never looked better visually. That's what I thought from the trailer, and having now seen Series 11, I agree with that. I think, honestly, this is the best that the show has ever looked. That's down to a number of different factors. They have a different kind of lens than they've used in the past, and there's a new aspect ratio, and there's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's just got this different kind of feel to it that I think works really well. And I really like the direction for the most part this season. And our first returning director, Wayne Yip, he directed a couple episodes of Series 10. He also directed Resolution. I do have to admit, I think Resolution probably did have the best direction, but I think that all the new directors for Series 11 did a fantastic job. And again, I don't think it's a problem to have all this new blood. We also, for the first time in New Who history, have a new composer, Segun Akinola, instead of Murray Gold. And as much as I love Murray Gold's stuff, I don't miss him at all, for two reasons. One, he composed for the show for 10 seasons, every single episode up to this point. He was with the show for 13 years. That's a long time for somebody to be doing one single job. Because it's not just consistently in every season, it's consistently every single episode. And as much as I love the man's work, I think it's time for him to move on and time for us to have a new composer. And I'm really glad that we finally do. Because like I said, I love Murray Gold's stuff, but he was with the show long enough, I think, and long enough to the point where I don't miss him anymore. And I do honestly think that Series 10 was probably his weakest score overall, and maybe that's because of fatigue, or he's just running out of ideas for the show, I don't know. It was still good, but nothing stellar. I think 10 seasons is a long time to be with the show, so I think it's good that he moved on and we have some fresh blood. And after hearing Series 11, I think Segun Akinola is a great person to continue the music of Doctor Who. He's done a fantastic job. Very different kind of style, less bombastic, much more subtle, and more like background music. I personally do really like that. I know some people had issues with that, but I really like that. And there were plenty of tracks this season that I just thought were absolutely beautiful. Listening to the Series 11 soundtrack, when I got to Sonic Screwdriver, that one, it just, oh man, it just made me reflect on Series 11, and it just made me so excited about it and so happy about it. And I didn't love Series 11, but it just got me pumped and excited, and I think Segun Akinola is a wonderful choice, and I hope he sticks with the show for a good few years, at least all the way through Chibnall's era, if not beyond that. I think he's an excellent choice, and I'm really, really glad about that. I think one of the things I like too is every single episode seems to have a more distinctive feel. While this occasionally happened with Murray Gold, I feel like a lot of his episodes have this similar kind of tone to it, this similar kind of feeling. So it didn't have as much of a unique identity each episode, but I think Akinola did a really good job of differentiating the music between each of the episodes. And Demons of the Punjab is possibly one of my favorite episode scores of all time. It's just absolutely beautiful. So good on you, Segun Akinola. Another thing, of course, that he brought was a new variation of the theme tune. This one is very heavily based in the original 1963 theme, and I really like it. I really, really do. It's a fantastic update to it, and yeah, he did a great job with that. It just sounds excellent, and it's a great return to the show's roots, and it gets you pumped for the episode, and it's just a feeling of mystery about it that the original theme had. It's great. I love it. Of course, going along with the music, we have a brand new title sequence as well, which before the series, obviously, we had no idea what it was going to be like, but upon first seeing it, I was really disappointed by it. For one, I thought it looked like a fan-made title sequence, which it actually turns out it kind of was. But it's grown on me a lot, and I was disappointed there was no TARDIS, disappointed there was no face. I still wish they fit the face in there somehow, and I'm disappointed that it's a little bit shorter. But now that I've grown used to it, I do actually quite like it. I think it looks excellent, and it's a great callback to the original Howl-Around title sequences of the first 3 Doctors. So I think it's great, and I'm really glad that we have it. My biggest complaint is that the title sequence is not in The Woman Who Fell to Earth or Resolution. I think that's stupid, and I will stand by that. I just don't see the justification for it. Of course, along with all that stuff, we also had a brand new doctor and brand new companion. So, elephant in the room, a female doctor. When Jodie Whittaker was announced, I made no secret that I was not a huge fan of the decision. For a long time, I felt pushed back against it, and I was just not comfortable with it, and I was honestly pretty negative overall about that decision. I made 3 videos about it when the casting was announced. Her first scene in Twice Upon a Time I did not like, and I've made numerous Reddit posts about it and comments about it, and I was just not a huge fan of that decision. I have mellowed out since then, and I before the series began, I had already mellowed out and started to become more excited for it. But honestly, the fundamental feelings I had, I still have. I'm not like actively against it or anything. I'm not like, oh, how could they cast a female doctor? That's absolutely ridiculous. I'm not uncomfortable with it anymore. But I still hold 2 main feelings that I have held from the very beginning. One, I still prefer the Doctor as a man. That statement sounds bad, but that's just because it's what I'm used to and it's what I prefer, and it goes hand in hand with another attribute, age. I prefer the Doctor as an old man. That's not to say that younger men can't play the Doctor. That's not to say that women can't play the Doctor, because they absolutely can. That's just what I prefer. That is the demographic that, to me, is the ideal Doctor. If I were to cast a Doctor, I would cast an old man. Like Peter Capaldi. I think all the Doctors have been good. Yes, that includes 13. She's not even at the bottom of my Doctors list. But, like I said, that's just what I prefer. If I were to cast a Doctor, my ideal Doctor would be an older man. And that's just how I feel. That's just the demographic that I feel most fits the Doctor's character. But again, that's not to prevent any younger actors or women taking on the role. It's just my personal preference. And everyone has personal preferences. The other thing that I still agree with is that a female Doctor is completely unnecessary. I still fully believe that there would be no problem if there was never a female Doctor, and that the Doctor could be a man forever, and that would not be an issue. I still fully believe that. I'm okay with a female Doctor now, but I would have had no problem whatsoever if the Doctor had remained a man. And I still feel that way. Of course, one of the things I was really worried about going into Series 11 was how much it would focus on the Doctor being a woman. Would it be used as a political platform to constantly be sending messages of female empowerment, which in and of itself is not a bad message, but would it be interrupting the story? Would it be taking precedence over good storytelling? And I'm really happy to say that it didn't. Going into Series 11, based on the trailers we saw, it didn't seem like it would factor into it that much, which was good. But then we also had other trailers like the Breaking the Glass Ceiling trailer that was not very encouraging in that regard. But yeah, I think Series 11 handled the change excellently. Didn't put too much focus on it, just had a couple of lines referencing it, and only have it play into the plot when it makes sense to. So, that only really happened in The Witchfinders, which, of course, made sense that it would happen in a time where people were sexist and hunting down women as witches. So, I can say that Series 11 successfully portrayed a female Doctor, and that's very good. I'm really glad about that. But, not just talking about how a female Doctor is in the role, how is Jodie Whittaker in the role? And how is her Doctor in terms of writing? I like her, but that's honestly mostly all I have to say about it. I think Jodie Whittaker's doing a good job in the role, but she's not astounding me like many of the other actors have. But no, she's still doing a good job, and her Doctor as a character is not particularly remarkable, but she's still really enjoyable to watch. I felt that she was the Doctor from the very first episode, which is something I can't say about Peter Capaldi, although over time he did really grow on me. Now he's one of my favorite Doctors. But she kind of felt the same throughout the season for me. In the first episode, I felt that she kind of felt basically like a female David Tennant. Not as much anymore. She just feels like a bit more tame of a Doctor. So I don't know. I just don't really have too much to say about the writing, which is probably not a good thing. But I really like Jodie Whittaker in the role. I think that she has done a very good job, but it's nothing remarkable, which is what's holding it back from being, better. Now, in addition to the Doctor, we also got 3 new companions, Ryan, Graham, and Yaz. And I mean, even before the series began, I always felt most drawn to Graham, and I didn't really have any sort of draw towards Yaz and Ryan. And that continued through the whole series. I still feel that way, honestly. I loved Graham. He was awesome. I'm really glad we have a more elderly companion. That is incredible. I'm so happy with that. And it seems that most other people agree with that. Even people who don't like Series 11. It's very rare to see someone who doesn't like Graham, even if they didn't like the series as a whole. Graham was just incredible, and Bradley Walsh was amazing in the role. The other 2 companions, not as much. I think all 3 are acted pretty well. Bradley Walsh is he's incredible throughout the season, like I said. But Tosin Cole and Mandeep Gill, they're likable. They do a good job in their roles, but they're just not very memorable. I think Tosin Cole's probably the weakest of the 3. I don't think he's bad. He's just kind of... He's definitely... I don't want to say worst, because that implies bad. He's one of the least skilled, I'll say, actors we've had for a companion, at least in the Revived series. But I still think he's good. And he's certainly improved, I think, over the course of the series as he's settled into the role, which is good. But both of them portray the characters really well, and they make them believable, they make them likable, but I can't really say much more than that. Bradley Walsh is the only one that I can really say that is some stellar casting, that is a stellar actor, most memorable, favorite part of the season, probably, honestly. Another little change, too, is that the series has a new format. We only get 10 episodes. They are 50 minutes now instead of 45 minutes. But it's really disappointing to have a shorter series again, and I really, honestly, didn't feel like the extra 5 minutes did much for anything. I would much rather continue having 12 45-minute episodes than 10 50. So that's kind of disappointing, because I just don't feel like that was enough time to justify losing 2 episodes. I could understand losing episodes if they were like 60 minutes each. That would totally make sense. But 50 minutes just doesn't cut it for me. So that is one aspect of that is one change to this series that I don't really think worked. And probably one of the final things in the behind-the-scenes bit to talk about is how tight spoilers were this season, which is a very refreshing change from past years when things have been just spoiled nonchalantly, because I hated that. The problem is I'm too big of a fan to not look at like news and stuff. If it's official, I know about it, so I can't avoid spoilers when they're officially announced. This time, I do believe they went a little bit too tight on it, because in some cases we didn't even know what episodes were about until like 2 weeks before they aired, whereas every other season that I can remember in recent years, we've had all the episode titles and at least some idea of what each episode was about at least a week or 2 before the whole series began. So that was somewhat disappointing. The trailers also didn't really show much. They were exciting, but they didn't show a lot. And I'm really glad that spoilers were kept. I had a wonderful experience with the first episode where I had no idea what the monster looked like, and that felt really, really good, just to have zero idea going into it. But I do think that there should be a little bit more lenient on that in the future. Like, it's fine to reveal an episode title or an episode synopsis before the whole series airs. Like, you don't have to keep every single detail so secret. But I do overall like that they're trying to be more spoiler-free. I think that's a great ideal to strive for, and it's a great improvement over past series, and I do think it helped me to enjoy the series a little bit more. The only thing is, this series doesn't have a whole lot to not spoil. There's barely anything in here that's spoiler-worthy, So, of all the series to have this treatment, this one is honestly probably the most useless to have it on. So, I hope that this policy, well, I'm sure this policy is going to remain intact for as long as Chibnall is there at least. But I hope that Series 12 has more things that are worth keeping secret. That would be nice, I think. But I like the idea in practice. It just wasn't totally necessary for Series 11. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the behind the scenes stuff. This is going to continue in a second part about like all the plot related things, and then I'll give a final overview of my thoughts. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this. So I'll see you in the other video to finish discussing my post Series 11 thoughts.